Hello, welcome to the Spiritualist Circle of Light. This is our dream class, and we will be looking at Nigel Hamilton's book, Awakening Through Dreams, The Journey Through the Inner Landscape. He begins with telling us that dreams may be a mirror, a reflection of our impressions of the world, what we think about life, uh, what we think of our social activities, what we've experienced with them, our state of mind, and our inner reality. And the reason why he could make this assumption and is because that it's our emotions that drive the dreams. If we are feeling anxious, that's we're going to have some kind of dream reflecting that. And if you recall in some of our earlier classes, science has shown that it is our, our dreams are based on disturbing emotions. And anxiety is one of those emotions that will generate these types of dreams. So it's no wonder that we experience that, especially with our impressions of the world. Uh, Now, back in a couple of months ago, this is October, so in August, when the riots were happening in Chicago, Detroit, and a lot of the other major cities, the social unrest was beginning. This was reflected in a dream that I had. Now, of course, in the dream, it didn't reflect the riots or anything like that because none of that was going on around me. But it did reflect on the unrest that I was experiencing along with the rest of society. Uh, it was what inspired me to give several talks at the chapel that I serve, the First Spiritualist, or I'm sorry, the First Spiritual Church of Prayer, which is part of the Independent Spiritualist Association, the same as the Spiritualist Circle of Light. And so I put together these talks, these series of talks on each chapter of Galatians. And in Galatians, it's talking about false news, fake news, false doctrine, false gospels, people who are teaching one thing and acting another, all these falsehoods and stuff, which I found very interesting. But that's one way that our dreams can reflect our impression of the world and the social activities that are taking place. And in another one, a client described a dream. They said they were going up this bridge, and when they got to the top, they couldn't see the top. It put me in mind of one of those bridges in Texas that go over the shipping channels. But they're driving up this bridge and they can't see the top. And then they get to the top and there's this sign that reads road closed. So as she's telling me this, I'm sensing this anxiety, and this is what I asked. What kind of anxiety are you experiencing? So, well, I'm not experiencing anything. I'm not experiencing anything like that. Well, this person also had experienced some health issues that they have been recovering over the months. And I said, well, you've reached the top of this bridge. You've got this sign that reads road closed, but what does that really mean, road closed? It means that the road is not ready for you yet. So you have to go around it. That's what the dream was about. You're anxious because you want to get on, but everybody else hasn't done their part yet. So it's that's a reflection of this person's inner reality or emotional state. So now, there are multiple approaches to what dreams are about. And because there are multiple approaches to what they're about, there are multiple dimensions to the dreams that we have. And we're going to begin with Jung's ability to recognize that our inner reality has its own personalized symbols. And just to give you an idea of this, we're all adults here, right? Anyway, the dream, this morning's dream, I am rubbing this lovely woman's butt, and then in the next segment, we are looking for information on neuron net, the neural net, which is, neurons carry the impulses, electrical impulses in the brain, which send messages out. And there are a couple of ways that this particular dream could be interpreted. It could have been a reference to a young lady that I go out with periodically who enjoys to have her butt massaged, or and the fact that we play word games back and forth. So, mind games, neural net, mind games. That's one way of interpreting it. Another way of interpreting is that, I'm behind on my research, which was a concern with me the night before. Because, I've got my days broken up. I work on each project, a different project, a different day. And in this particular instance, it was a day that I set aside to put together my talks for Sunday. And I've got two churches that I serve, the First Spiritual Church of Prayer and the Spiritualist Circle of Light. So I have those two that I serve. So I set time aside to write up talks and to research future talks. I just like to stay ahead of the game. So it was a concern of mine because I barely edited one talk and started another one. And it was a concern. So this dream could be a reflection of that. Behind, the woman's behind, and research, because we were in a library researching. So, and these are, personalized dreams there. Of course, they're also tied in with some cliches as well. But, the idea here is that we each have our own personalized symbols and archetypes, which set up recurring representations and themes. And, themes are actions, thoughts, ideas that get rehashed over and over in our dreams, because our dreams generally are not sequential. I mean, you'll have a dream where you've got this scene, and then all of a sudden you've got another scene, and all of a sudden you've got another scene. The scenes are not connected, but the message is. And then you'll go on to another sequence of dreams that appear to be juxtapositioned, but they'll have the same underlying message. So the dream is repetitive. So I don't know if anybody's experienced it. I know I have. Unfortunately, I can't think of one offhand. But everything that we've experienced, everything we plan to do, we imagine, there's an archetype for it. Some very common archetypes that some of you may be familiar with, particularly with some of the recent movies. Superman and Captain America. These are superheroes. But the archetype with these people is that they are what we like to call goody two shoes. They're wholesome. There's no blemish to them. They're idealized versions. And that's the archetype there. We can dream of Captain America, of being Captain America. Well, sometimes I dream of being Doctor Who. I'm a fan of Doctor Who. And there have been times where I've had these dreams where I was pretending to be the doctor. And what does the doctor represent? Sort of a madman, someone who has these crazy ideas, does these crazy things. And that can be an archetype for that. So I'm sure each of us has those archetypes. So, some of these archetypes, and just what is an archetype? It's like a general label. Captain America represents a generalized, idealized version of people we admire. The same with Superman. I just happen to be a Marvel comic fan. That's the only difference, but the idea is still the same. So, but Jung is of the opinion that some of these archetypes that we experience in these dreams have like an ancestral memory. They're part of an ancestral memory or karmic traces, bits and pieces left over from past incarnations that have caught up with us. But the idea that Hamilton is presenting here is that dreams have an interconnected reality that influences it. Not only, well, it influences and it reflects the environment we find ourselves in, circumstances, our general well-being that we find ourselves in. They're tied up with our self-esteem. Well, let's not get into all of that because then we start getting too deep. But our dreams are intimately connected to us. They are reflections. They are parts of us. And it's not that it's parts of us that we avoid or repress, but they could be if you're that type of person. But they're also reflections of our thoughts and ideas. I've had ideas come to me during dreams that some could consider bizarre dreams. For instance, and this could be considered bizarre. There's just a woman's torso with a breast. Well, to look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is the sexual content, but that's not what it's about because the breast represents love, nurturing. And that was the whole message with this. And it's just a simple image, torso and breast, and that's it. Not breasts, but just it's like a profile. That's the interpretation. It's all about love, nurturing that sensation. So, and a breast representing love it's an archetype. What do infants do? They nurse on the mother. They suckle the mother's breast. It's nourishment. nurture. So that's where that comes from. So from a holistic perspective, though, different realms or levels of consciousness are interconnected through different levels of our dreams. And for instance, we have a baseline consciousness that altered states of consciousness are based on. And our baseline consciousness is our typical waking consciousness. When we meditate, we go into what they call a discrete altered state. When we imbibe in liquor, we are experiencing a discrete altered state. Anything that takes us out of this basic state here. Now, you've got the same thing with dreams. Dreams have a basic or a baseline state from which to measure all of them. Your typical dream, which most of us won't remember. And then you've got the dreams that we do remember because they have entered into a different level of dream or a different part of the dreamscape, like the one I told you earlier with massaging the woman's behind. That was at a different state. It was at a state that broke through the consciousness. So they're going to reveal patterns. Everything we do is based on patterns, and patterns are our habits. We have habits that we do without thinking. Our brain has the same type of programming. They call them schemas. And what this is a brain construct that allows us to multitask. It allows us to drive down the road and think about what we're going to do at work, or the problems we had at work, or the problems we're going home to. You know, these habits, these mental constructs allow us to utilize our mental energy in a more efficient manner. So, and this happens in our dreams too. Now, the thing is with these constructs that we've developed is they act like filters. And unless something grabs our attention, we don't see it. How many times have you gone to work, or you've gone for a walk, and you remember very little of the walk because your mind was off doing something else and not paying attention to what you were doing because there was nothing there to get your attention. Our dreams are like that too. We'll have the mediocre dream, and if nothing interesting happens, we don't pay any attention to it. It doesn't get lodged in our memory. There's no emotional attachment to it. There's not an emotion that raises it to a level to where it's going to get stuck. And that's the idea. So these interactions that we have in our dreams, they interact with our waking state as well. And the way they interact with our waking state is the ideas that they bring to us. So when we're looking at our inner reality, which is our personal reality, it's our inner reality is what we think of ourselves in here, what we think of others in here, how we think. Now, our personal reality moves into what people like to call the collective conscious or the divine. Sometimes they'll call it the astral plane. And this is what we experience when we meditate. You know, we meditate and we have these experiences that are I don't want to say sensational, but they're not bizarre, intense. Experiences in our meditations are often intense. We experience intense emotions there. We experience these intense emotions through meditation. And we experience our typical self, like we've got these archetypes. Well, now we have this idealized version of ourself, and that's what exists within our inner reality here. It is the essence of our being, not the archetypical self, but the inner reality is our essence of being. And our dreams reflect these thoughts that we have of ourselves inside. This is how we discover our limitations, our challenges, the illusions that hold us, that prevent us from moving forward in our growth. In our dreams offer us revelations about ourselves. Uh, One of them and I'm sure I told this dream earlier. I'm in this luxurious house. I'm a babysitter of all things. And the mother comes in ranting and raving, arms flailing and everything. Well, think about this. What do women typically represent? Now, don't I'm not trying to be offensive or anything or offend anyone, but archetypically, women represent just emotions. They're all emotional, and that's how this woman was acting, was emotional, arms flailing and such. And I couldn't get an word in edgewise, so I collected my stuff. I grabbed my keys. I stepped outside the house. I'm looking through at the garden. I'm looking at the walkway. I'm looking for my vehicle, and the woman comes outside the door. But she's no longer flailing or anything. She comes outside the door and she says, "My daughter really, really likes you." Emphasis on the second really. My daughter really, really likes you. My response is, "Yes, I know." And it makes me uncomfortable. Well, now I woke up and I'm upset by the dream and everything. I'm angry. And it was a couple days later that, a revelation. I was not angry because of the implication, the impunity upon my character. I was angry because I didn't understand the motivation. And it's that troubles me still. I'm still concerned about how people see me. And, this is a revelation I learned of myself. It wasn't because I was upset by the impunity. It was the motivation that caused me to be upset, because I should not be reacting in such a way. That's what I learned from that I was still dealing with this and I had not reconciled everything. So that is where we're going to leave off in this particular instant. And we're going to look at a few symbols for interpreting dreams and what they could be. So when it comes to dreams, we see a lot of symbols in there, a lot of people, and we're going to look at people. So what you see here are 3 referees. These are people who are in authority. And typically, people who are authoritative people are they're going to represent guides. And what is it that guides do? Well, in this particular image here, we have a gentleman and looks like a vat. And we have someone here who could be a supervisor. So Our supervisors, they're in positions of authority. They could actually be representations of guides. And guides, they tend to watch what they're doing, watch what we are doing from a distance. And they also provide directions. Now, police officers are people who are in authority, and guides give us directions. They're like signposts, guideposts. That's what guides do. So, what could this image be telling us? Well, an image like this, we know it's a guide because they're in a policeman's uniform, but they're also holding a baton up to us. We could interpret this as they're trying to get our attention. They are trying to prevent us from moving forward. They're trying to redirect us. They could also be trying to tell us that we're about to get into trouble. There's a lot of things that can be coming on, that can be going on with this. So, people of authority are typically going to represent guides. And it can be more than just a boss, a police officer, anybody that appears to be an authoritative person can be a representation of a guide. So let's see what else we've got here. Okay, babies. Babies are a lovely typical symbol here. And babies tend to represent new beginnings. I mean, think about it. When we're born, we are embarking on a new journey. So babies will typically represent new beginnings. Not always. They can also represent babies. They can also represent pregnancies, but there are some differences in there. And as you become familiar with the nuances, you'll learn the differences there. So, what might this image be telling us? We've got the baby here. So we know it's something new. And we've also got the laptop here. And there are a lot of ways to interpret this. So, how might you see this? You've got the baby, you've got a laptop. Now, when you consider what's going on with the pandemic presently, a lot of people are doing what from home? They are working from home. So, in this instance, this could suggest a new job. So, or it could also suggest that work is beginning to interfere with something. But generally, anything associated with babies is going to represent a new beginning, something new. Now, in this particular image, we've got what's over top the baby's head this is stuff that is worn. This is stuff that is worn by some priests. Could be Tibetan priests, could be Buddhists, but teachers, spiritual teachers, is what this baby is dressed in. And the book laid out before it, well, that is a representation of spiritual writing, sacred text. So this picture here could represent a new spiritual undertaking or a new spiritual journey. So let's see what else we've got. Now, here we have a priest. And again, we've got the person of authority. We've got the divine component here. Typically, people who are of a spiritual position, religious position, they are going to indicate divine guidance, divine influence, stuff that's related to the divine. Now, let's see what else we've got here. Okay, so what might this indicate? We have a number of priests, but their backs are turned to us. Now, whenever you see images where their back is turned to you, it's what's the cliche? They've turned their back on you. It's typically that's what it's going to mean. You've done something to upset them. To also, if you see things off kilter, remember the old Batman movies where you were in the criminal's lair and the whole thing was at an angle. Well, that's an indication of spirit or someone being upset with you, even upset with yourself. The back's being turned, same thing. They're upset with you. Uh, Now, angels, a lot of us dream of angels. Now, angels are typically going to represent messengers or, again, guides. They're going to be representations of the divine guidance, um, divine inspiration. You know, whenever you see wings attached to a person, they're always going to indicate messengers. So if you have a dream that you would like interpreted, please contact us through Messenger on Facebook. You can also contact us through our email. Visit our website, which is Bird in Sky, BRDNSKY, birdinsky.com. We've got a variety of videos there, links to videos, articles, writings. We've also have a schedule of events there on our calendar page. We do streaming services through Zoom. The logon information will be available at both the Spiritualist Circle of Light Facebook page and the Spiritualist Circle of Light website, which is at birdinsky.com. We also have a morning service for the First Spiritual Church of Prayer. That begins at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Logon information is available again at the birdinsky.com page. Should all be there on the landing page. It'll be the same login information as for Spiritualist Circle of Light. The services include distant healing. You can add your name to a healing list. They include what some people call evidentiary messages, spirit readings. There's a variety of terms. The old term, when spiritualism was forming, was public seances. But, all of this is part of the service. And then you have our conversation. In both the service for a Spiritual Circle of Light and the First Spiritual Church of Prayer, there's a conversation going. We don't preach or drone on. Well, sometimes we drone on and on because we like to hear our voice. But typically, it's an interactive service, and we invite you to join us. If you have found any of this beneficial, please donate, leave some seeds with us. You can donate through our website, again, birdandsky.com. You can also hit pause for the video and scan the code with your camera. This will take you to, or rather your smartphone. This will allow you to donate through PayPal. And if you're not comfortable with that, you can always drop a donation in the mail. All the information is available on the landing page at birdandsky.com. So we thank you very much for joining us.